creative masterclass for TV, film, and video. I put together an amazing panel of really fascinating people. We will have some time at the end for some Q&A, and the only rule there is do not pitch them anything. I am a very, very, very nice person, but I go 0 to bitch in 6 seconds. So do not make me do that. We are going to start today with Sandy Smolin, who is a director. His credits include Brothers and Sisters, Dawson's Creek, Chicago Hope, The O.C., Everwood, Greek, Ally McBeal, L.A. Law, Northern Exposure, so he's like a new kid around the block, and First Day, which is a branded content series for Alloy. And he's recently done a documentary called The Human Face of Big Data. So if anybody's up in the other panels and they go, we don't know what data looks like, watch this documentary. Amy Taylor has done branded content for Martini and Rossi, Virgin Mobile, Cox Communications, Xbox 360, and Viagra, which, go Amy. She's also been working with the Feelin Network, which is an extension of Hallmark cards, and she has done a documentary called The Childless by Choice Project. Sam Millman and Peter Voss, who like to be attached together because they are known collectively as Bad Weather Films, have done some video parodies on YouTube on their channel called Street Spelling, which is a parody of 8 Mile, Tinder the Movie, which should be self-explanatory, Scarface 2, YouTube Power, Rainbow Man, and recently did their first theatrical length feature called Laid in America. So there might be some crosstalk between the Viagra branding and... Next to me is Casey Arnold, who has written Doc McStuffins, Thomas Edison's Boy. There we go. I'll be on top of that next. Doc McStuffins, Thomas Edison's Secret Lab, Paw Patrol, Robot, and Monster. And then she did a documentary called A Guy Called Dad, A Daughter's Journey, which is a close examination of her father's schizophrenia. Rick Nahira has done East Loss High, Mad TV, In Living Color, and his own Latino Logs. He is an actor, writer, and he works with the CBS Diversity Program. Last but not least is yours truly. I started my career writing shows like Knight Rider, Hunter, Jake and the Fat Man, Love Boat, Heart to Heart, and that's a vintage picture of me because that's the girl who wrote those. I am currently teaching a program in Convergence Media and how to make messages get attention other than the traditional way. So if anyone wants my brochure, it's up here later. So I want to take a basic overview of what everyone's done, but to start with, what are the current trends that have had the most influence on the direction you're taking in your career right now? Let's start with Rick.
I think the current trend is the web, as weird as it sounds. I mean, I'm on a show, I'm writing East Loss High for Hulu. They got picked up, and we're doing it again. And I worked for a guy named Ray Williams Johnson. He had 12 million subscribers, and he went through my program at CBS. So I like the fact that the skill I learned writing plays that got all the way to Broadway is the same skill set for the web. It's just independent producing, and it's open for everybody. So it's democratic.
Sandy, how about you?
One of the things that I've found is, as a director, you have to be versatile. And it used to do one thing and specialize in it, and I think you still need to. But I started out in docs, and then I moved to features. I work in television. I love going back and forth. I'm working on a virtual reality project right now that's just starting. And so, as a director, being able to do what you do and to do our craft, but to do it in different mediums, to me is one of the most creative parts of what I get to do, is to constantly reinvent it. It's all directing and it's all problem solving, but how you apply that to each of the different mediums is pretty thrilling.
Why don't you talk a little bit about how you apply it differently?
Well, in essence, it's storytelling. So whether it's a feature, whether it's a TV series, you're still telling stories. And for me, it's about how do you make an impact? How do you reach an audience? We live in a world where there's so much noise going on, there's so much background noise. How do you cut through that and make something that resonates, that kind of strikes people and stands out? So that applies to any medium I work in. So to me, the bottom line is, how do you make it real? How do you make it convincing? How do you give it depth? How do you give it substance? And how do you make it sort of about what life's about?
Amy?
So for me, the trends that are probably influencing me are sort of things that make me angry, because I find that kind of being a warrior and getting pissed off is when I do my best writing. So I'm working on a pilot about Big Pharma, and I'm also doing something that's got a lot to do with police and race in America.
So the Big Pharma, we can assume, is not a branded content.
No, quite the opposite.
Viagra.
Yeah, it's more Viagra.
You two fellas in the center, how about you?
I mean, current trends, I guess we're in like a unique position because we started with like YouTube. So we kind of like learned all of our filmmaking and directing and editing and everything based on people watching it for like, 30 seconds they have to be into it. So I think just the way we present our work has to be, it's like edited a certain different way. You have to engage people's attention like right away and have them interested, or else they can just click away pretty fast. And I think it translates over to at least what we've been doing on like bigger projects.
Because, well, the big trend in the past year and a half with YouTube is features starring YouTubers, and we always wanted to make features, and that's how we got our movie financed, was we attached two really big YouTubers to it. So that's kind of the big trend for us and enabled us to make a movie.
Casey, what about you?
I would say for me, I get brought in on a lot of stuff looking for a strong female voice, funny female voices, looking for girls that aren't just about things being pretty and frilly and sweet and clean, like girls that can think for themselves and play as rough as the boys can and do the science and the math and the whatever as much as any boy can.
So at what point did your own journey in childhood translate into the programming you were doing? Because you did children's programming. And how do you go from writing for Barbie and Paw Patrol to a documentary about your father's schizophrenia?
The documentary actually came first. I like to think of my writing for kids as sort of getting paid to have a childhood I didn't necessarily have for myself. So it's interesting, because you have to like model behavioral things and things that are, typical things that happen to you as a kid. And I sometimes have to be reminded that they're typical things because they weren't typical for me. But I think it's helpful because I'm not writing from the same box, so it makes them feel a little bit differently. And then if you are a kid who doesn't have the typical, Leave It to Beaver upbringing, there's still something out there for you that can resonate with you. But my documentary helped me, get in a better place with my own family, so it makes me be able to write that stuff easier.
And Sandy, at a time when most people tend to go from documentaries to broadcast TV and scripted, you did the opposite flip. What was behind that choice?
About 4 years ago, I got a call from a nonprofit to ask me, who wanted me to do a film for them, and I said, I haven't done a documentary in 15 years. And they called again, and they called a third time and said, look, can we give you a ticket to go to Nepal and see what we're doing? And it was a program called Heifer International, and they give livestock to women. And these women that we met were so incredibly impressive. They were on fire, and they realized that you couldn't just give the animal, you had to train the women, and most of the women in Nepal have never been educated, and if they had, it ended in 5th grade. And so these women went through this amazing training program where they learned how to take care of their families, how to grow vegetable gardens, how to talk across caste lines. And what we saw was just revolutionary. And so I came back and said, sign me up, and went to Panavision, went to Panasonic, went to Radical Media, got a lot of people to help. And we did this little 20-minute film that went on and had a life of its own. It won a bunch of awards. And it made me realize how much I missed as a filmmaker, sort of being back in the real world. And as much as I loved working in Hollywood, there was a little bit of a disconnect between what's happening in the rest of the world with the kind of stories that we were telling. And because of that film, I got asked to do 4 more and traveled to India, Rwanda, Peru, and Georgia. And then I was just smitten. I didn't want to stop. And it just, in a way, I came full circle because I could apply everything I learned in features and in drama to telling documentaries. Brought a feature cameraman with me to Nepal and just gave it a very stylized look. And so I increasingly like bridging different worlds, making documentaries that look like features. And to me, they all intersect. And so if I can pull from different parts of my past, I can do something that's a little bit different.
So the market for those films, is it growing, changing, decreasing? What's going on?
Well, there's an incredible demand for content. And that's the beauty of the internet. That's the beauty of the world we live in right now, is that all of our devices, which is part of what my last film was about, we are addicted to our devices, we use our devices. All those devices now increasingly are vehicles for content. So I think it's a great time to be in the creative world. It's a really great time to be able to make content. And also I find that, on one end, there's stuff that's being done on YouTube, but if you go to the other extreme, if you make it really good and really high production value, there's a demand for that too. So there's like the two extremes are opening up doors for anybody who's making content these days.
So Sam and Peter, I find that I feel like I have to talk to you as a team. Bad weather guys. Do you find that having gone from YouTube to making a feature was easier than just setting out to make a feature first?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because we wrote the movie as well, and I think in regards to the writing of it, we're used to writing like sketches, like 3 to 5 minute sketches, and we crank them out in a couple hours now. So, we obviously, planned the whole movie out with the outline, but scene to scene was almost like writing just like sketches. So it came pretty natural to us in that sense. And people ask, like, was it harder? Like, was it hard? I'm like, it was easier. We had like a bunch of people like working for us, and we didn't have to do everything, ourselves anymore. So in that regard, you got to surround yourself with really talented people as well. Like, we had a really great DP, and our AD was awesome, and that makes like a whole lot of difference when they can kind of control everything, and you just give your notes.
Sit back. Yeah.
No, but yeah, it definitely helped a lot. I mean, we have like over 170 videos on our channel, I think, and over 5 years, our stuff definitely has gotten better. You can tell the quality's better, like the writing's better, the editing gets better,
and we do everything for our videos, from writing, directing, like producing, props.
Yeah, so if we would have made a movie like 3 years ago, I don't think it would have been nearly as good as what we have now, because we just were practicing everything we were doing. So,
what's the distribution of the movie?
Distribution it's still being decided at the moment, but the way we got investors and everything was to like put it on iTunes and have these YouTubers sell it to like their fan base.
Yeah, because it's a proven model. There's a bunch now, but they've all been financially successful based on the amount of subscribers the leads had of those
based on
movies.
the budget too.
Yeah, it's low budget, so relatively speaking, it was a lot for us.
Can you tell us about what?
Was it?
About what was the budget?
It was in like the $500,000 range.
So one more question on there. The movies that have been done, with the exception of Camp Dakota, all tend to be geared toward the Awesomeness TV audience, which is kind of like eager to buy anything that their favorite cute boy is in.
Right.
So you seem to be making kind of the American Pie, kind of R-rated.
Yeah.
Unless I'm wrong. And
No, it's pretty R-rated. I mean, it's called Late in America, so it's definitely like our style of humor and comedy, which I think yours like a little older. Although the leads, they're two very different. They have two very different audiences, and their comedy is very different. But together, they're like opposites. So it's pretty hilarious, the two of them together. So no, it's definitely not one of those kind of like Disney, like Cameron Dallas movies.
We wanted to make a movie that we would enjoy watching, and that's something that we stuck to our guns from the beginning. That those did make money, and they were very geared to like the fan base, but we felt like we can make kind of like a smarter, edgier movie and still appeal to the fans, even though they're younger. But it's just something that we enjoy watching.
I mean, the takeaway, I think, is that you can do so much with a camera nowadays you couldn't have done just years ago. I mean, I produced my own shows, my own plays, and my first play cost $1,200 and did $1 million in ticket sales. The next play made it all the way to Broadway. So it's
Wow.
like, if you write something, if you star yourself in it, you can actually get a royalty and an equity salary. So I was always about money. It was like, if I do this and make this money, then I'll do that. And I think, the whole generation of the YouTube generation it's giving them a chance. I mean, before it used to be in the old days when people went to film school, they went because they could get good cameras. Now, that's why half the people I knew went to SC were like, oh, you could get great cameras there. And now people can get their own cameras, and they can put it up on the web, and it depends what you want to do. But now it's what used to be a writer was, we have a blank piece of paper, fill it up, and try to sell it. Now you can actually produce things, put it on the web, and try to sell it, or monetize it.
So here's my question to you. Now that it seems like the Emmys said, okay, we're diverse now, one couldn't help but notice the absence of Latino winners at the Emmys.
Well, if white men tell you they're diverse, then you have to listen to them. So, of course.
Okay.
No, I'm in the Writers Guild of America, which is called the Whitest Guild of America. And, I've written plenty of TV shows and stuff like that, but reality, most people don't know a Latino. I mean, the truth is, I told you that story was, I was writing a pilot for HBO, and the other writer was white, very famous, and the scene was about a woman running through New York in Central Park, and a Puerto Rican guy goes, hey, don't run from love, baby, don't run from love, and he's playing the congas. The guy turns to me and goes, oh my God, Rick, you can't write that. I go, why? You know how scary it is for a white woman to have a Puerto Rican man yell at her in the Central Park? It's the daytime, Saul. It's the daytime. Does she really think this guy's going to pick up a 300-pound conga and run after her? He's like, oh, my God, you're right. Okay, I'm sorry. Because you're just such a fantastic writer. You're so professional. I said, really? I go, have you ever worked with a Latino professional before? Because the pilot was about a Latino professional. And he said, and on cue, his maid walked in and poured him a cup of coffee. He said, only Maria. Only Maria. So how many white people or people of color meet other people of color? So the reflection of TV and the media tends to be dominated by white people. And it's not me that says it. The Writers Guild of America will tell you. The Annenberg study at USC will tell you. All these are real studies that point out that Latinos are less than 5% of the media, yet we're 17% of the population. And you talk about what's going on with women and what's going on with other people of color. It's a problem because we're going to have an audience that is made up of people of color. So eventually you're going to have to get to them. So yeah, it's not great.
So following up on that, how do you build an experienced workforce of creative Latinos if there are so few job opportunities available to them?
Well, it's like me. I've written a film that did about 8 million in ticket sales or whatever. And I've done all these different things, Broadway shows, and all these more things. I just have to be better, 100 times better than the white guy. And that's the reality. And with women, I'd say women have to be 50 times better than the white guy. And, and that's the way it's going to be. And instead of going, oh my God, you can't say that, I actually wrote a book called Almost White, Forced Confessions of a Latino in Hollywood. And I write this stuff out, and people are like, oh my God, how can you say that? I go, people in Hollywood don't read. No one's going to read this book. So the reality is it's a big problem. So if you really want to be ahead of the curve, and if you're out here listening, you got to figure out how to reach that audience. And there's ways to do it. I wrote in Living Color. That was a very black show. I'm not black. I made a point to study what I wrote about. So there's ways to do it, but it's not going to be through a program, because programs don't work. I need the Georgia National Guard to march me into CBS before anything happens. And so it means we got to be smarter, and we got to look for an audience and grab that audience. Tyler Perry, Some people don't like his work, but something? He knows how to sell pizzas. And Cheech Marin, who directed my show on Broadway, what did he know? He knew how to sell pizzas. So there's markets, there's niche groups that you can make a living. I've been making a living since I was 17 in this business. It just hit me as I got up here. And I'm looking at these guys going, hey, they're young guys making a living too. So that's what you got to do. So in the end, it doesn't matter what you are, you just got to make profit. So I think it won't be programs that do it. It'll be Latinos that help themselves and find smart Anglos or other groups that join them. That's, in Living Color, Keno Wayans found me. A very smart black man.
So I want to ask Sandy, as a director, how much consideration goes into casting the roles in a TV show? I mean, is it frequent that they'll say, this is just a man and you can cast it with anyone? Or do they, by defining someone as a white guy, 35, does that etch in stone
No, it's not etched. In fact, there's always a token effort to include some minority, but it feels token.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, the conversation always comes up, can we cast this part? But it's usually the nurse that has 2 lines.
They don't say Gardner Saul Berkowitz. You know. They go, Gardner, his name's Jose. Well, how'd that work out? You know, Shonda Rhimes is better because she doesn't put people's ethnicity.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Yeah. I do think it's changed in the last couple of years. There's been a greater effort to kind of to diversify a little bit, but it still tends to be on the fringes. Yeah.
So bad weather has a diversity. Why don't you talk about that? Was it by design or by accident, or?
You talking about for the film?
Yeah.
Well, the story is about 2 foreign exchange high school kids, so automatically we're looking somewhere else. KSI is one of the leads, and he's African American. He's British. He's like hilarious. Casper Lee's the other one. He's from South Africa. It wasn't like planned. I mean, we were just we knew who KSI was. We knew he was funny. We saw more in him than what he does on his channel. Same with Casper. Josh Leva's another one of our biggest stars. He's Latino. And we got Bobby Lee.
Oh, Bobby Lee, Matt TV, yeah.
Yeah, so we have,
Korean.
and Jerry Bednob is this really funny
Indian
comic, yeah. So we have a lot of diversity in it, and it was really just, we like writing like really interesting characters, and all these people play characters really well.
We don't like white people. So.
Yeah, we don't like white people.
Good for you kids.
It wasn't really that intentional. It was just like these were like the comics and the actors we wanted to work with that fit the roles, and that's kind of like how we casted it.
People of color get to move up through comedy. That's been the tradition in America. I mean, you look back on all the people that really made any changes, Richard Pryor's, everyone else, Keenan Ivory Wayans, people like that, you know, Chappelle, they've given that opportunity through comedy. You know, that's the big deal breaker. That's the one you can go,
It's the
comedy
angry
works.
art.
What?
The angry art.
Yeah, what is the angry art? But it's because you're pissed off about something.
Right.
So if you're a man or a woman who happens to be pissed off because you're not in the mainstream, eventually you become the mainstream. My play on Broadway, the guy who was ahead of me was Jackie Mason. You know, at one point, Jews really weren't seen on Broadway what the extent they are. It was the Borscht Belt comic. And all of a sudden, he got validated on Broadway. So that stuff does happen, and it does it through comedy many times.
So Casey, you're a comedian. Why don't you?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I think you had a point about what you said, of like if you're a woman or a person of color or someone, you know, if you're not a young white man, sorry guys, be better, like prove that the stereotypes are wrong and that they can't have a reason to not hire you because you just have to be funnier or better. I'm very often the only woman on a stand-up show or the only woman in a writer's room, and you just have to roll with it and prove that you belong.
Yeah, they don't hire you because they have to. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
It's normally you had to be really good to get in that room. And if you're a woman in that room, you're going to be really good, probably better than half the men. And I've experienced it. I've been in plenty of those writers' room where I looked at a woman and said, wow, unfortunately, you had to be 50 times better than that guy. And they always are. So that's the most amazing part of it. That's a struggle.
Amy, you want to talk about how this fits in with what you're doing?
You know, it does in some ways, but unfortunately, the story that I'm going to tell is the unfortunate one, which is that, you know, I do a lot of films with Lifetime now, and we do things at a low budget range, and so I'm not selling on iTunes where I can, you know, hope. So I'm looking for foreign pre-sales. The problem with foreign is that they do not want to buy material that star particularly African American audiences. We just had a film and had that come out. And, you know, you see that and you go, okay, so how do you get around that challenge? Because that, I think, has long been a stumbling block for people. You know, and it goes to primarily Europe. And so I think that is where you have these opportunities to find financing in new and creative ways, and also financiers who are willing to maybe take a risk and do things at a different level. So we are doing more things that star, you know, African American folks, just finding other ways to do it.
Look what she's saying. She's saying African American folks. A lot of times in the media, normally it's either black or white, or in Latino case, almost white. So it really is that. They think of minorities as black. And you're going, no, there's a lot of us that aren't. And we're still minorities. You know, it's not the issue. But I think what you're saying, you know, is there's inherent racism around the world. in Latin American countries, you see the telenovela stars, they're blonde and blue-eyed. And yet in Latino world, here in America, when they show a Latino, they're going to show a dark brown Latino with something in his hand and doing some sort of work. And that's the stereotypes within both cultures.
No, that's true. I was just mostly referring to the producers that I've worked with. They've encountered that stumbling block. They hadn't mentioned it with, Latinos as much as with African Americans, but I see your point, Marilyn.
Well, in that case, I'm happier. My people are doing better than joking.
But then the question becomes, so the budget on the average Lifetime movie is how much?
It really depends.
$1 million-ish?
Yeah.
Okay, so for $1 million-ish, they're saying there's not enough Americans or people in North America who will watch this, so we have to go raise foreign pre-sales?
It's just about putting the budget together, right? So, let's say you're going to make a budget for $1 million. Where are you going to get that $1 million? So you want to get some of it from tax sales, some of it from your equity investors here, and then you look to make up the gap through foreign pre-sales. And you typically can't make up that gap without that money. So that's all it is. It's just a budgeting paradigm.
Which is both fascinating and tragic at the same time.
Right. But this is something like every time I've heard speakers talk too, it's like this is just like a repeating story, which is that foreign pre-sales tends to be a challenge, just getting something. Right now it's like they want to see a guy with a gun. Like if you go, let's talk to sales agents, right? If you're trying to finance an indie movie, go out there and be like, okay, how am I going to get an indie movie made? And they'll be like, okay, horror's really tapped out right now. I mean, I've had this conversation with hundreds of them. But really, what you really want right now is a guy with a gun. And I'm like, wow, because that's really new. So, what's the other thing? Well, I'm like, what about a woman with a gun? Well, maybe. So, but it goes to the foreign pre-sales. So yes, and I'm looking for ways around this in financing. I mean, I think these guys and their efforts are a great story about ways to get around that, but it's like, how do you finance an indie movie?
So at what point do brands become part of the conversation when it comes down to funding?
Well, I think they're always part of the conversation. You're looking for money wherever you can get it. You're basically, in Hollywood, there's nothing, if someone offers you money, they have to be a person that's joined the Nazi party before you go, absolutely not. Look at it, this is America. You got Trump is ahead in the polls. I mean, God, look at that. You need everything. I'm about to do a PBS show with Tavis Smiley. We're going to pitch it. And first thing they're going to go is, how much money can you raise? So that means I have to go to a brand. So eventually I got to go to a brand. So TV is based on commercials. That's why they call it. They call the daytime with soap operas. They sold soap between. So it's all about the commercials. Somehow marketing, corporate has to be part of the picture.
I think one of the things that I increasingly am interested in is how to work with corporations to still do what you want to do, and rather than selling out by having a corporation, but use them and find a way to do something that they get something out of, but you get to do what you want to do. So I just did this project and had a couple of very big corporate sponsors, but they never got to look at what we did until we were done. They benefit from the publicity the projects get, but we keep editorial control. And so when you can do that, it's the best of both worlds. But you'd have to be creative. You've got to find ways. That's what we do costs money. It's an expensive medium,
Yes.
and somebody's got to pay for it.
I think
So-
South Park didn't get any corporate sponsors to like the third season or something. Because that also happens, because a lot of times corporate sponsors don't want to be involved in comedy. Because you get a sketch show, you're worried someone's going to go do something really bad. Standards and practices. I did a show with Neil Patrick Harris for CBS last year, a pilot I wrote, executive producer. They just couldn't find a place for it. Because I think really was sponsorship. Everyone was terrified to sponsor a sketch show about ethnic people. Fox wasn't. They didn't have a problem with that when they did In Living Color, because it was Rupert Murdoch, it was those guys thinking, and they said, even as they were doing, they said, we're going to make a bunch of black shows. And they asked them why. Black people are loyal. They'll watch those shows, and then we'll get rid of them and put on Dawson's Creek. So that's what they said, So this is how people do their programming. This is how they work it out. And once you know that, you figure out what your opponent, and you have to say the word opponent because it's a competition. What are they? Why are they against you? How can I take away their no? How can I sell them this? Those are the things you have to think about. You can't turn to anyone and go, why don't you help out people? It'd be so good. wouldn't that be nice in this world? And they're going to look at you and you think you're an idiot. So, you know, there's Amnesty International downstairs, and I love those guys. But I'm also going, how would they sell a film? Because you have to think that way. How do you sell? My dad was a door-to-door salesman. I learned how to sell early.
Also, brands are just looking at different ways to reach audiences, and traditional advertising is changing. So if you can find a way to use that brand and let that brand, help that brand reach an audience while it's serving your own purpose, that's the way to do it. And that's happening more and more, because the old models are not working, and increasingly they're not, you know, the money that they're spending on commercials is not giving them back the money that they've spent. And so
Plus
find
the web, you can
a way to
quantify
do
it.
it, yeah.
Yeah, the web you can quantify. You can tell me how many people are clicking on, how long they're clicking on, where they're clicking on from, all those 1,000 things. It tells you much more. The Nielsen's, I used to think that was a joke. You have to go to a Nielsen box and program it. And I got to tell you, my people aren't going to do that. You know, maybe it'll be higher in the Asian community, but not in the Latino community. And I've been to a Latino house where they had the Nielsen box just to wonder what they did. And I had them program a show I had on there. And my ratings went up. And I went, man, I just could go just find out the people at the Nielsen box, sit down with them, and have them plug me in. That's how ridiculous it is.
They have, for a lot of the kid shows, a lot of the shows I work on are actually toyetic. They're produced by the toy companies, so they're basically, you know, glorified long commercials so that they are maximizing their money. You know, like I do a Barbie movie for Mattel for a toy they're launching, and as I'm getting my script notes, the toy people and the marketing people are like weighing in on what they need, and it is sort of the balance of the like, okay, guys, I get that that's what you want your toy to do, but here's what you need the story to have so that people like this character enough to want to buy that toy, and it's the balance of that. But they are all sort of like feeding the like, we want to model this as a play pattern for kids to do, so they'll buy our toy. But it's smart of the companies that like they've found a way to produce these shows that are, I would say, mostly putting out like good messaging, even though it's driving kids to buy toys. So it's, I don't know if there's a way to translate that to, you know, live action grown-up stuff. If we, you know, suddenly are buying clothing brands of whoever's wearing, you know, whatever, and that's who's producing the show like back in the day. But definitely for kid stuff, it's a very, very, very toy-driven. If you're looking to come up with a kid show idea, if it's not a cute toy or something fun to play with, maybe think about how it could be, and then you'll have a better chance of selling it.
Yeah, plus, it's a seamless advertising. This thing that people are doing. I was on the LA Times award show. I was presenting something just this week, and someone tagged me and said, "What are those shoes you're wearing?" And so I sent it out with the shoes. I wear these Stuvie, whatever they're called, shoes, and it got picked up. Like people talking the shoes I'm wearing. The truth was, they'd given me those shoes like 3 days before, and I was like, "Why are you giving me these shoes?" They go, "Oh, just in case you want to wear them." And all of a sudden, I'm like, "Oh, now I kind of learned firsthand. That really does work." And everyone's looking for those ways to get your message out, all constantly, seamless advertising, all those things.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about seamless integration of branded content is I did one of those. And the branded content was a product that Google has. And I showed it to 3 Google executives. And not a single one of them caught that in 5 minutes they heard the word Google or a reference to their product 25 times. Mm-hmm. It was so subliminal. So now, what is that fine line between satisfying a company of, I'm mentioning your product in context so it's seamless, so it doesn't seem like an ad, but you're aware of it enough to see that it's done? I mean, is that something you've had to experience, Amy, in your branded content?
You know, so not really. I mean, the integration has always been pretty obvious in the stuff that I've done. But it's certainly something that I know when I've pitched reality television we've worked on, because when you go in with a reality show these days, you often want to kind of have some of your budget already kind of like prepared. So if you're going to do a show like we had this one called Pimp My Parents. So you want to come in with some, you know, maybe a sponsor who's going to come in, like if you're going to need $1 million for 13 episodes, maybe a sponsor that's going to do $400,000 of that, so that when you're pitching it, you're not just pitching, like it used to be in reality, if you were pitching, you know, you had a great host, you had some talent, that would be kind of like, because what the idea is, whatever, who cares about an idea in some ways. In reality, like there is a little bit of that, but if you have that great that great talent, and then you're like, oh, okay, so I have an element here, I have an attachment. And the game has just gone up such that if you're coming in with a pitch, you need to also be bringing part of the budget through sponsorship. And then in that game, which, as I say, I haven't sold anything yet, so I haven't seen how it played out, but finding that sponsor that would be seamless to the idea definitely has been always a challenge,
Okay, because I know at least 43% of the audience wants to know. Tell us about your Viagra project.
So Viagra was a commercial, and it spun off some branded content from that. But the first thing, it was a commercial we shot in South Africa, where we had a bunch of different guys taking a shower, singing "I Did It My Way" by Frank Sinatra. And actually, the director of that and I are still really good friends. But it's from that we just had some little kind of short things about men talking about doing things their way and what it means to do something my way, and so that the core of the campaign was very clearly just a standard commercial, and then the sort of little moments were this how do you do it my way?
Were there trains going through tunnels and things like that?
Rick,
Yeah.
could East Los High work on network television?
Yeah, it could easily. I mean, East Los High really started, it was done for teen pregnancy. There was actual organizations that said, hey, we want to do these little short teen pregnancy bits and all this other stuff. And they said, we'll pay for them. And finally, they had written, it was Carlos Portugal, who's a great guy, he's the executive producer, had written all these little episodes, like 3-4 minutes. And then he said, why turn this into a show? And then he wrote a show, and then all of a sudden, it got picked up by Hulu. And then the next day after it aired, the numbers were so huge, they bought it for another season. So they could see it. They could actually see the numbers of all these people getting the shows. But I know just in LA market, there's a radio show, K-Day has a radio, and everyone thinks it's black. It's like something like 53% Latino. So you have to really approach every group and understand who you're really reaching. So yeah, Hulu, that show would easily work on any network show. It's really kind of dirty. It's more like an HBO Showtime version because there's teen pregnancy, there's lesbian, there's gay, there's everything underneath the roof that high school kids deal with. So it's Dawson's Creek on crystal meth, it really is. So, but it's much more of a world that we all see stepping out of our offices. When you go to anywhere else, like I've spoke at Google, I've had 20 people in my speech, 20 Latinos. And I said, where are the Latinos? They said, you'll see them downstairs. I go downstairs, and everyone with a hairnet at the commissary was Latino. And I went, this is a problem. This is a problem for all of us because eventually we're going to live in wealth disparity. Really rich or really poor. And that's a big recipe for revolution.
Yeah, but it's also with other groups, because if you really want to be invisible, you dress up like a 60-year-old white woman.
Yeah.
Nobody will
You do.
notice you. You're the potted plant.
No, that's sadly about human society. That's what do you think they found the witches were always 60-year-old white women in villages? Well, that's the person you get rid of first. It's that inherent racism is in there too.
Okay, so given that you've given some thought to this, assuming that, what's the solution? How do we get momentum besides class action suits, which certainly didn't work for older writers?
That really didn't work. I remember that one. I saw the class action suit. I said, that's never going to work.
No, it had no result. It was like the dollar bills going to hookers. They just tossed it out and it went away.
Yeah. They let it rain.
So what is the solution, not just for Latinos, but for all protected classes?
And the truth is, it should be for everyone. I don't want to see. I'm one of 3 Latinos ever wrote and starred and played on Broadway. I would like to think there was 50 of them. But the truth is, it comes with this audience. The change is you guys. Gandhi said be the change you want to be. Well, it really is true. So if you make a point of just reaching out of your comfort zone and try to find someone who's African American, Latino, LGBT, whatever it is, and include them to your work group, you're going to have a better product in the end. You just will. And that's what you got to do. So it's you guys have to do it. I'm already doing it. I'm at CBS right now.
But, that also goes to just creating content, whether it's for minorities or for women or anybody. But we're all here because we create content.
Yeah.
And as filmmakers and as directors, as writers, it's on our shoulders to make that content what we want it to be and make it get it out there, you know. So with what you guys are doing on YouTube, you basically started it because you had no other outlet for it. I think we all do that. And that it's about whether you kind of wait for it to come to you or whether you create it.
Make what you want to see out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Make your passion. I mean, that really is it. In the end, Straight Outta Compton, movies like that, someone was passionate about that story and had to have it told. It's our problem for anyone, every one of us up here tends to always be finance. Where are we going to get the money to do what we want to do? And that's the difficult thing, you know. Getting funded is everyone's mantra.
Well, so let me ask you this, Bad Weather Boys. You just made a feature. Did you join the Writers Guild?
No,
Did you join the Directors Guild?
no,
The Screen Actors Guild?
no.
No.
This is not the House Un-American Activities Committee.
Yeah,
Thank you for knowing what that was. So here's the question. If you had to deal with union rates, would you have been able to make your movie?
Well, for us, the movie was SAG.
Yeah, it was a SAG movie.
Non-union for.
Yeah, they could do it. They could easily do it. I mean, I can tell it for them if they don't know. There's Writers Guild has a new media contract.
Yeah.
You know, so first of all, it's not that much. You can work on a show, and they can pretty much practically tell you what they're going to pay you. So there's a lot of ways that the unions will bend over backwards to help it work. I mean, it's just what they know. If you didn't know that, you're not going to go out and think about it. And I don't blame you for that. But I'm a member of the Writers Guild and, you know, SAG and AFTRA and all that stuff.
And those unions have done good things for all
Yeah,
of us.
they have.
I mean, in this industry, they've been
I have 2 more years till I get full pension.
Yeah.
And I'm a young guy.
Former member of the Board of Directors of the Writers Guild, vested in the pension, kept my son alive when he needed that at birth. I absolutely have nothing bad to say about the unions. That being said, the numbers, the requirements to pay up front, when you start looking at those contracts, they get much more complicated. And I'm just saying this is one of those things we ought to be talking about more, especially kind of going into a strike year if anyone is in the guild out there.
Yeah, but
But that is one of the reasons they've come up with new media. The Directors Guild
Yeah.
has done it, Writers Guild has done it, SAG has done it, because they're aware that there's all these new formats and that they need to be flexible.
Plus, you're in the
They've got
Writers
another way to
Guild.
do it, yeah.
You know the strike we did last time, the last strike, where you had to be in the picket line. I know I was. It was ridiculous. You need Teamsters to have a strike against anyone. I would be at CBS with my picket sign and be like, "Oh, hey, Les, how you doing?" As they're coming on in. I had the woman, my big fat Greek wedding woman,
Yeah.
Nina
Vardalos.
Yeah, she brought gourmet pizzas and cappuccinos for all of us in the strike. And I was like, we're not going to win unless we're beating cars as they come in here. I mean, we need Hoffa to win something. So, yeah, it's a big problem. But the Writers Guild and all those things, until they care about really minorities and women more and people that are victims of ageism, they're not going to change. They're in business with the networks.
I guess to answer that question, since we knew it was kind of like this digital movie most likely, yeah, we had the new media, SAG New Media, so you have a lot of leverage with, and a lot of the actors that were in the movie, some of them took dramatic pay cuts just because they liked the project, and a lot of them were digital YouTubers, and we had relationships with a lot of them already and had worked with them already, so it wasn't hard for us to get like the talent we wanted for the film. And that was for like the acting side of it.
Okay, so let's kind of go down the line, starting with Casey. What's next? What do you see next coming on the horizon, and where do you want to go next?
Well, I mean, I just want to say first, like, I know a lot of the brand and stuff feels like you're just selling out and writing commercials, but I do feel like there are opportunities for it to still be like good, viable content, and that, like, you know, brand and stuff doesn't necessarily have to be the enemy. I say that partially because toy companies pay my bills, and I appreciate that. But also, I think it's okay that they're creating more avenues for content. That said, I would like to write for grown-ups one day, maybe even people who are not animated. So I'm heading more in that direction, but it's nice, like Sandy said, to be able to, you know, walk all the different things and write live action and animated and TV and feature. So I guess I would be aiming for the 6 to 12 animated, but also live humans who can say dirty words on television.
Sandy?
I think I've learned in the last couple of years is we have to be flexible. Our industry is changing so fast. YouTube was barely on the horizon 6 years ago, and now huge careers are being made out of it. VR is picking up. But it all comes down to just storytelling. Just tell great stories, find great stories to tell, find good content, and do it passionately. And that will always rise to the surface.
Sam and Peter?
We're 3-4 weeks away from finishing post on our feature, so we're in the middle of that, and then we're also starting to write a new script for another feature. So we want to make another feature, and we're slowly getting back into the YouTube thing again and finding time to make sketches. And so if anybody wants to buy a script, then let us know.
Yeah, I think we have a couple. What we want to do is kind of merge the two worlds. That's what we did in our first film as well, but like have traditional actors and comedians working with the digital YouTube Vine talent, and it'd be cool to do like, a star from one of each or something like that. And that's kind of like our goal, is to kind of merge those two worlds together and prove that you can make like a movie starring YouTubers that is not like bad.
Amy?
Well, two different things. One, I just finished associate producing a mockumentary called The Room, Where Are They Now? I don't know if any of you are Room fans out there, but it's going to be a freaking awesome digital experience. And if you haven't seen The Room, go see it. It's amazing. And the other thing is I'm going to AFM with a horror film that I wrote called R.I.P., co-wrote along with Chad Darnell. And we're going to be trying to get some funding for that.
That's great. I'm at CBS right now at the Diversity Showcase I do every year. There's 32 series regulars out of it, 30 regulars, so many people, 3 on Saturday Night Live. So it takes a little bit of my time, but I'll probably go back to Hulu. I'll do that. I'm writing a film for Manny Pacquiao, which is really crazy. And I'll write another one and do what I do. I got a series where I interview people, and I just joined a group called Latino Rebels, is where it sounds like it's a digital sphere. They get, I think, 500,000 uniques every month or whatever, and it keeps growing. So they want me on the board, so I want to develop more digital.
I just got my 3rd patent in mobile entertainment, so I am massively committed to this space and hope that you'll all be addicted to it by next summer. Questions? Yes. You, blonde hair. I didn't mean to identify you as a blonde.
I think this question is more for Sam and Peter. Yeah. So as audiences are getting more and more conditioned to digest small pieces of story, 30 seconds, 3 minutes, whatever, and you build this audience of people who are probably very young and doing that, who are used to getting it for free, how do you craft a business plan or a financing plan that you can actually go to your financiers and say, these people who are getting this for free, not only do they never watch movies, because that audience, you can't get them into a movie theater. I've related to a lot of them, they don't go to the movie theater. I mean, I offered to pay to take my nephews to the Martians, they will not go. But how do you then say that this is going to translate into them actually buying movies online, my movie online? The equation seems a little off.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one thing you have going for you more than anything is how obsessed these kids are with these people. And then it just kind of becomes a numbers game. But it at the end of the day, they can go tell them to go buy this pair of underwear that I wore when I was 6, and people will bid for it. So I mean, for instance, in our movie, the lead KSI has about almost 11 million subscribers, and Casper has almost 6 million, I think. So just as that example, you can kind of take percentages of that. But these guys, people are doing it. They're selling it. The model works.
Yeah, it's still obviously...
We didn't invent it.
No, I mean, it's obviously still a risk for our financier, but yeah, it's a proven model, and Expelled and Camp Dakota that came before us, they were very, very financially successful. Our friends made that, and they kind of told us the numbers on that, and so we were able to kind of take that and
I think it's mostly about the fans, like
Yeah.
being crazy about these YouTubers, and they'll do anything they want them to do.
But
Pretty much.
TV's free. When you think about it, TV's free. Where they make the money off advertisers, you'd probably do the same.
And it's still seeing them in something bigger than they're doing. Like seeing KSI in like a feature film as a movie is exciting for kids rather than just seeing him play FIFA and like scream and stuff. So different.
Marilyn?
Following up on that, with the YouTube thing, I know YouTube is now moving to a model where they're gonna have a charge of some kind. Can you speak to that a little bit? Do you know anything?
Yeah, I don't know too much about it. I from what I've gathered, it's like a subscription model where you're gonna have to like pay now to subscribe to channels. I don't know exactly how it's gonna work. I think it will be positive for a lot of the creators that, especially because like these fans are, they're gonna pay to keep watching him. I don't know too much about it. I think it's probably similar to like a Netflix or a Hulu or something.
Okay, my understanding is that it's optional. If you want to watch YouTube without commercials, you can pay a subscriber fee, and they will figure out the algorithm that decides how much you make. You can also still wrap your things with advertising, so it'll monetize in two separate ways. But apparently, this was designed to satisfy the people who say, gee, I love watching YouTube, but I hate the roll-ins. So it's an experiment. They haven't picked a launch date yet.
Yeah, people will pay for that. I just saw the Code Black at CBS, and I was like, wow, this is really good. And then I saw it on TV, it wasn't as good, because there was a commercial between moments, and I started getting distracted. And, but when you watch a show, like a half-hour show without commercials, it feels like a movie. There's a different feeling to it, so people will pay for that.
Yeah.
Once the cool kids start doing it, all the other kids will.
Yeah.
You in the back, yes.
I know you worked on Living Color, and I know one of the things that made Living Color so unique was that it took fresh, young talent and gave them a platform. And as I'm following different people on Instagram who kind of do the sketch comedy, they have a lot of followers, they get a lot of likes. Can we anticipate that some of these social media folks that do sort of the sketch comedy, is there going to maybe be a return to television or Netflix or Hulu for them to sort of get that next?
Yeah, there will. I've done Living Color, Mad TVs, and tons of other sketch shows and different things, but it's really hard to do a sketch show. That's what people don't realize, because it's different when TV says this has to air at this time, at this date, and if you don't have it to air and you're just not ready, you're like driving a train. There's a big boulder behind you, and you're feeding the train with scripts. So like this program I do at CBS, we write 1,300 sketches before we even do the show. 1,300 sketches are written. Of that, we choose 22. So imagine, and these are all iOS, Groundlings, the top of those schools. Plus, we've had people like Kate McKinnon that was in the program who already was on the Big Gay Sketch Show before she got Saturday Night Live. So those things will exist because it's the raw talent that we'll watch. CBS, we're doing a casting right now, and they said, they named 2 YouTube stars they wanted me to talk to, and one was a Viner. So they're like, how do we get this guy? They couldn't find him, and he was Latino. I said, I'll find him. So I called up like 2, it sounded like such a stereotype, called up 2 cousins, they got him on the line. But I called the guy, and I'm in a car with Eddie Olmos, and I'm going, this is a real Latin moment. And I'm like, Eddie, and Eddie thought I was kidding. I go, listen, we'd like to bring you to CBS, we want to meet you. And he's like, don't go to CBS, don't do it. And I'm like, I'm really talking to a real person, Eddie, stop doing this. And he's like, who is that? I go, it's Eddie Olmos. And he's like, I don't believe this is a real call. And didn't call me back. I had to keep calling him. But we'll find him. We'll find it because you'll see raw talent. And we know we'll need 12 writers to write that show. Living Color had about 12 writers on it, of teams. And these guys have every writer was great. I mean, it was like you'd be in a room with the best of the best. Even Jennifer Lopez was a fly girl that would come into my office. So yeah, those things will happen. And they're like, Key and Peele came out of Mad TV, Chappelle, all those guys. Sketches is hard, but once you do it, it's better to sell nowadays. You can put a sketch on a phone, you can put it on the YouTube, you can do 1,000 things, because people don't want to watch long shows anymore. They just don't. So yeah, I think it's going to come back.
And with that, we will say thank you so very much. Enjoy the rest of Digital Hollywood.